Climbing at a low elo can feel impossible. But what if I told you that climbing at a low elo was as simple as following these 6 tips? So if you're really frustrated, you've been having a rough time, and you really want to get out of elo hell, then just watch to the end of the video, and I promise you, you will have everything you need in order to climb as quickly as possible. Now, the first tip that I have for you is actually to play off the time interval, specifically the ability time interval, because there are certain abilities that basically always go out before a hit or a rush, and the 2 notable ones I want to talk about is Sova Dart and Dark Cover, which is Omen Smoke. Now, while some percentage of the time people are just going to dump all their utilities and rush, a lot of times what happens is that some team will throw their utility and the other team will use utility to delay them. They'll use a Sage Wall, they'll use a Slow, they'll use a Molly, whatever the case may be, and it stops the push temporarily. And then you won't see from the enemy for a little while. You don't actually know what they're doing though. They could be sitting there waiting for you to push up. They could be trying to just gather space on the map for a re-hit. They could be rotating sites. You don't really know, but what I would tell you to look at is that freaking clock. At 40 seconds, a Sova is going to get back his recon dart. At 30 seconds, an Omen is going to get back another smoke. This means that when that many seconds go by, you can expect a re-hit. There's often not going to be any push or rush without utility, and players will often delay until they get that utility back and then engage based off that cooldown. This means you can expect a rotate push or a re-hit around the 40-second mark, typically where these type of utilities come into play, and there's a lot of other utilities that are around similar time intervals. Now, what this means is that you can easily anticipate when an enemy is going to push, when they're going to rush. Oftentimes, they're going to go right after their abilities enabled so they can utilize the rest of the time as fast as possible. And also, if you try to make a play a couple of seconds before the interval comes up, you can actually disrupt what the enemy is trying to do. And in your next couple of games, I want you to challenge yourself with looking at what utility the enemy has to gather information or make a push, when that utility comes back, and see if you can actually guess when these hits are going to come, because you're going to be right so many times, you're never going to look at the game the same way again. Now, I know a lot of you want to get to Diamond and beyond, but you're actually not alone on your climb. In fact, we've helped thousands of players just like you climb the ranks faster than you could even imagine. We recently created a brand new course showcasing the exact advice given to players like you to help them climb, and you can take a look at our one-on-one coaching sessions and how our coaches simplify the game into easy to follow steps that will instantly skyrocket your rank. The incredible thing, you don't just have to take our word for it, because we offer a rank improvement money back guarantee. So if you don't climb, you don't pay. Check it out right now if you believe you're stuck in elo hell in the links down below. Now, the next tip I'll give you is slow and correct versus fast and sloppy. Oftentimes, especially in shooters and games with abilities, which Valorant of course has both, everyone is obsessed with going fast. Speed is all anyone wants to do. From fast rollouts to fast ability use to fast flicking to fast shooting, everyone is just trying to beat everyone to the punch and go super fast, but in the process, so many people do things incredibly freaking wrong. And oftentimes in low elo, people are shooting just as fast as people in higher elo are shooting, but the people in higher elo are doing it far more correct. And it's better for you and your development to do things correct and slow first before you amp up your speed. I want you to focus on perfect, proper execution, not a rush. I see this all the time where a controller wants to get that smoke there as fast as possible and they mess it up. They leave a little crack, or they want to do that perfect rollout on the site and they feel like they have to, or else their team will get there before them, so they try to catch up and they mess up and they just freaking die. Or they just see an enemy to the side, and instead of taking their time flicking over and putting their crosser on their head, taking their time with that shot, they're flicking and shooting and spraying and just trying to kill them at all costs as fast as possible, which is only going to work like 1 in 50 freaking times. Focus on nailing things to 100% perfection, exactly how you like it, and then you can speed it up. And if eventually you're like, hey, I want to change how I'm doing this, I want to change how I'm smoking this or executing this or aiming this or whatever the case may be, slow things down a bit more again and then speed it up once you get used to the new way you want to do things. Basically, making sure that you nail down the correctness first before you add in the speed can make it so that you know exactly how to do it the proper way, and you're not stuck with bad habits for your entire life cycle of playing the game. Because as you'll see with people in your normal life, people that learn how to do something sloppy and then they do it fast causes all sorts of problems. Like the biggest one I think of is people that drive. They never learn how to do it correctly in the first place, and then now they're doing it fast and wrong. I mean, you know, if you make sure to learn how to do it properly slow, then you can do it fast over time, but don't rush to that conclusion so quickly. Now, tip number 3 is use every piece of utility to your advantage. And the most common thing that I see, and basically any coach will tell you that low elo players do, is they will see players die when they have utility left in the bank. They'll swing an angle, challenge space, or make a play when they could have made that play stronger if they would have used some of their utility in some way. And it doesn't really matter what utility you have. Almost every piece of utility can aid you in some way, whether it's clearing an angle, gathering information, isolating your duel, whatever it is, you can use your utility to help you. But most of the time, people are just dying and they have a whole bunch of utility in the bank and they're just not using it. Now, I understand if you're trying to swing with your team or executing something together, then it can be correct not to use your utility because you want to make sure to make the trade and make the proper engagement with your team. But don't let that specific situation turn into a habit. And if you catch yourself dying again and again where you're like, damn, I should have used this molly, or damn, should use that smoke to isolate that angle, whatever the case may be, make sure that you are analyzing yourself every time you die about what you use your abilities for, did you use them at all, and what can you do in your next life so that you make sure this doesn't happen. Now, for tip number 4, keep your ego in check. Stop trying to be a hero every single game. So a rampant problem that I see is a lot of players are buying light armor, they're buying sheriff with their abilities, and they're just generally throwing their economy all around so that they increase their own impact, right? They're thinking about how they could buy the best weapon for that round. So, you know, their whole team is saving, they're buying that freaking sheriff. Or they're constantly on a hero buy trying to be the one that makes the difference. But the problem with this is that you're not playing very fundamentally at all. You're playing so that only if you pop off will it be a worthwhile play. And I understand having the confidence to make these good plays and having the confidence to try to go for things like this at times. But oftentimes what you're doing is you're putting your ego on such a pedestal that you're sacrificing things that make your team more fundamentally likely to win because you imagine that you're always going to be that hero. And if you could always be that hero, I'm going to be honest with you, you wouldn't be where you are in rank. And while it happens occasionally, oftentimes higher ranked players will not just buy separate from their team because they imagine themselves to be crazy better. They recognize the skill of the people with and against them, and within that, they flex their skills and try to create advantages for their team. This means making sure that you're still hitting the buys with your team, buying full armor and weapons when your team can buy, and ideally having abilities as well. Maybe not always buying a sheriff or buying all this extra utility when you don't need it on a save round, and instead playing more fundamental with your team in a rush or a designated strategy. Think about what helps the team better and what gives you all an easier shot at victory, not necessarily what lets you dink harder. And I feel like a lot of players that get into this rut start feeling like all their teammates are terrible and they will only win the game if they drop like a 40 or 50 bomb, or they even get to the point where they feel like no matter how many kills they have, they can't possibly carry the game. But you are creating that. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're constantly going off alone, lurking and not playing with your team because you don't think that playing with your team is going to get you the win, not buying with your team because you have zero expectations for your team, to the point where you are the one that is giving your opponents better weapons. You're the one that's messing up your team's overall strength and eco, and you are creating this environment for yourself, and then you're blaming your team for it every single game, and that's really what's holding you back at the end of the day. Now, tip number 5, simple and effective comms. Every comm that you speak should be clear, concise, and to the point. Make sure that anything you say gives as much information as possible as quickly as possible. If you know where they are and you know the actual location, call that location, say who they are, say their health total. This is really fast information that you can give. Don't go on a long expose trying to describe exactly how you died, what happened, what was the intricate situations. Like, all this information is just nonsense to people. You want to give them as clear information as possible where they don't have to think too much about it because it's going to mess up their gameplay, but they get to absorb that information as fast as possible. Pings are also super helpful. helpful. Anything that's like distracting, audible groans, rages, you see this far more in freaking low elo than anything else. Why are you trying to chat with your team about why the play didn't work out? No one really cares. Like, I think maybe a lot of people like to do this because it justifies them failing, right? You're like, oh man, he's so lucky, or damn, I can't believe that this. No, that doesn't help anybody. It only helps or protects your own ego, and that's useless. Clear, concise, to the point, and you're already going to have great comms, but I'll take it a step further than that. If no one on your team has any direction, you feel like no one is doing the same things, there's no strategy, take freaking charge. People are willing to give a de facto quote-unquote leader a shot if there's no one that is trying to calm or communicate or lead the team, and someone comes through with a simple, straightforward strategy. Hey, let's split B, let's do this, dog up long, stalk here, dart here, whatever the case may be. Calm for your team, be confident about your comms, and make those comms clear and concise. And if your strategy works, your team is gonna kind of make you their like temporary leader, where they're just like, okay, we're just gonna listen to whatever this person says because at least everyone is doing something and we're all more likely to win. People only get toxic and give up when they don't see a route to victory, when they think their time is gonna be wasted. So by taking on this leader position, by making it so you're confident and vocal with what you want to accomplish, and it's not too complicated, this will give people like the vision for a win, a victory, and it makes people less toxic, more likely to work together, and more importantly, you make it so that you don't have a team of a whole bunch of individuals. Everyone is generally on the same page. Now, last but certainly not least, I want you to not run away from your mechanics. Like, when I first started Valorant, I had really below average mechanics because it was my first tac shooter mainly. I played a little CS, but not much. Now, instead of embracing that, embracing aim training, focused on improving my aim, I ran away and focused on running and gunning, speed, and running away from like the pure tac shooter aspect of Valorant, trying to make use of crazy abilities, crazy mobility, and, you know, really neglecting that core fundamental gunplay. But I promise you, it will only get you so far. Because I neglected that, I limited my improvement by such a large margin. And if you think you can get to high rank while not aim training when people are aim training, not practicing mechanics when other people are, your aim will just never keep up to people that are doing those things. And if you think that mechanics don't matter, they absolutely do. Like, I'm not saying you have to have crazy good mechanics to get to a high rank of play, because you really don't, but you do want better mechanics. It makes everything that you're doing easier. It makes every play that you're trying to execute better. Because if you're coming up with a really great play, a really great swing, you can double swing someone and lose because your mechanics are bad, even if the play was good. Or you could get double or triple swung and you could dominate them because you have amazing freaking mechanics. Mechanics is that glue that holds everything together and allows you to win plays that on paper you should lose, or if they're bad, lose plays where on paper you should win. And that's why you can't run away from your mechanics. Don't neglect them. Make it part of your gaming routine to practice your mechanics. And mechanics are not something that you're gonna earn overnight, so the sooner you start, the better you will be in the long haul, and it's going to be something that should be tied to all your sessions. So yeah, these are the 6 tips that we got for you, and if you follow these to the T, I promise you, you will get out of low elo. But definitely let us know if you have any comments down below, and check out SkillCapped if you really want to climb as quickly as possible. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.